The air on the primetime political panel show was already charged with tension when CNN anchor Kaitlan Collins launched into her sharply worded critique of Representative Jasmine Crockett. Seated across from her in a sleek, modern studio, Crockett had been offering a well-articulated argument about institutional bias in political reporting. But Collins cut her off mid-sentence. "Frankly, I don't know why we keep pretending like she's qualified to be on this panel," Collins said. With a smirk, the audience gasped. The cameras caught the moment Crockett blinked once, stunned but only briefly. As murmurs spread across social media in real time, Crockett leaned forward with a calm and calculating look, rather than immediately reacting. With anger, she reached for her notes and slowly, deliberately, placed them down. The silence hung heavy, but it was Crockett who broke it, not with volume, but with precision. "Unqualified," she repeated, her voice even. "Let's talk about qualifications then, Kaitlan." And with that, what began as a dismissal spiraled into a moment that would soon dominate every political feed in the country. Crockett began by outlining her extensive background, not just as a lawyer, but as a civil rights attorney who'd taken on high-profile cases that other politicians only referenced in speeches. She listed the cases she'd won against police departments, her work with pro bono defense clients, and her time as a state legislator, where she co-authored laws protecting voting rights. "You may not like my style," she said, locking eyes with Collins, "but don't mistake your unfamiliarity for my incompetence." Collins tried to interject, but the host raised a hand. He, too, looked visibly caught off guard by the escalating exchange. "And while we're at it," Crockett continued, "you want to discuss credentials? Let's pull your resume, Kaitlan." The camera zoomed slightly to capture Collins' shifting posture. Straight from covering entertainment gossip to moderating presidential town halls with zero accountability for your editorial biases, does that sound like journalistic growth or corporate favoritism? The panel's silence was deafening. Some audience members applauded. Crockett had done something rare. She turned a personal attack into a national conversation about media integrity. What made the moment even more electric was how effortlessly Crockett transitioned from defending herself to dissecting systemic issues. "This isn't just about me," she said, her tone firm. "This is about every qualified black woman who's been told she's too loud, too emotional, or simply not enough. Not because she lacks experience, but because she makes people uncomfortable by telling the truth." She cited recent studies showing how women of color in politics are disproportionately labeled aggressive or unqualified, despite having superior records to their white male counterparts. Viewers online exploded with support. Hashtags like Crockett Clapback and Unqualified began trending in minutes. Even major journalists and analysts tweeted their praise, noting that Collins may have picked the wrong moment and the wrong woman to challenge. But it didn't stop there. Crockett's comments sparked broader conversations on morning shows and op-eds, many dissecting how media gatekeepers wield soft power to discredit voices that disrupt traditional narratives. For the rest of the segment, Collins noticeably refrained from making direct eye contact, a stark contrast from her earlier confidence. As the show continued, Crockett masterfully redirected the conversation back to the policy issues they were there to discuss. While other panelists seemed shaken by the earlier tension, she displayed a cool demeanor, effortlessly pulling up statistics, quoting congressional transcripts, and breaking down proposed legislation. "The thing is," she said calmly, "you can attempt to attack my character, but you'll never erase the work I've done." Collins sat back, her earlier energy now replaced with forced smiles. One of the producers reportedly whispered in the host's earpiece, likely advising against escalating further, but the moment was far from over for viewers at home. Video clips began circulating across Instagram, X, and TikTok, with millions of views accumulating by the hour. College students, legal scholars, and activists all chimed in, many declaring Crockett's take down the live TV moment of the year. Even those who didn't always agree with her politics conceded one thing: she had defended herself with intellect, facts, and poise. For many Americans, it was the first time they'd seen a real-time unraveling of gatekeeping mechanisms on a national broadcast in the post-show segment. The host attempted to salvage the tone by thanking all guests for their participation. But Crockett took that opportunity to give one final remark. To anyone watching this who's ever been told they're unqualified for spaces, they earn the hard way. Don't shrink, educate, disrupt, and let them know you're not going anywhere. The applause this time was louder, uncoached, and sustained. Collins gave a stiff nod but remained silent, clearly rattled by the fallout. As the cameras faded to black, Crockett's team backstage was already fielding interview requests from major outlets. While Collins faced criticism from several of her colleagues, some even issuing quiet apologies on her behalf. By the next morning, major media headlines weren't about the show's intended topic, but about the moment Crockett flipped the script on elitist media narratives. Late-night comedians and podcast hosts replayed her words, adding their own commentary and further pushing the clip into viral territory. Her calm dismantling of Collins became an emblem of a broader reckoning, one that wasn't just political, but cultural. In Washington, the ripple effect was immediate. Crockett's political opponents, who had often underestimated her, suddenly found themselves treading more carefully. Her Democratic allies praised her poise and strategic mind, with some insiders suggesting she could be a serious contender for future leadership roles within the party. Young staffers and interns across the Capitol reportedly shared the video clip among themselves as inspiration. Meanwhile, Collins faced internal scrutiny from her own network. An anonymous CNN insider leaked that executives were unhappy with how she allowed personal bias to cloud professional judgment, particularly on such a high-stakes platform. Panels on competing networks began to analyze Collins' comment, not just as a gaffe, but as a revealing slip-a-sign of deeper prejudices embedded within elite media circles. In response, Crockett issued a single tweet: "When they question your presence, make your purpose undeniable." It received over 1 million likes in a matter of hours. And while Collins made no official statement, the silence spoke volumes. As the public leaned in, journalists revisited Crockett's record, uncovering even more achievements that had previously gone underreported. From her tireless advocacy for voting rights in Texas to her sharp questioning during congressional hearings, her resume read like a blueprint for principled leadership. Independent outlets began asking why figures like her weren't given more airtime, while media watchdog groups openly criticized CNN for failing to check its own internal biases. College debate teams used the Crockett-Collins exchange as a case study in rhetorical strategy. Professors held lectures on how systemic marginalization plays out in real-time media environments. Crockett, for her part, remained grounded. She went on to give interviews about the substance of the original debate, the legislation, the policy, the people affected. "We can't lose the forest for the fire," she said during a later MSNBC appearance. "Yes," I responded, "but let's not forget why I was on that stage in the first place, to advocate for those whose voices go unheard." Back in her district, constituents rallied with pride. Community centers hosted watch parties replaying the segment. Schools invited her to speak. Young girls, especially those of color, sent handwritten letters thanking her for standing tall. Some wrote poems, others drew pictures. Her office released a photo of her reading the letters with tears in her eyes. "This is why I do what I do," she captioned it. Meanwhile, social media continued to fuel the firestorm, and Crockett's follower count skyrocketed. Online activists pointed out how rare it was to see a public figure deflect a loaded attack with such control while still returning to the work at hand. "She didn't just win the moment," one commentator said. "She redefined how to respond to dismissal, not by yelling, not by begging, but by proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that she belongs." The narrative had flipped. Kaitlan Collins' attempt to discredit had only further cemented Crockett's reputation as one of the most prepared, articulate, and fearless voices in American politics. Even a week later, the moment hadn't lost steam. Analysts across the spectrum were still dissecting every frame of the broadcast. Political operatives privately admitted they were reassessing how they approached interviews with Crockett moving forward. She wasn't just a guest anymore, she was a force. Polls showed a spike in her national recognition and favorability ratings. Op-eds flowed in from both conservative and liberal outlets, most concluding with the same sentiment: agree or disagree with her policies, but don't question her qualifications. A few rival commentators tried to reignite the criticism, but public sentiment had largely turned against them. A viral TikTok compared Collins' expression before and after Crockett's rebuttal, captioned, That's what accountability looks like. It reached 20 million views in under 48 hours. This wasn't just a one-time viral moment, it had become a cultural marker. AC